Hello, welcome, Stephanie. Hi. All right, everyone, we'll get started. So today we have Stephanie.
Hello.
We have Stephanie Dahling. Stephanie is a recent Bachelor of Social Work graduate from the University of Victoria and will be a graduate student in the Master of Arts and Community Development at UVic for this May. Between 2016 to 2018, she earned her diploma in social services at the North Island College, Comox Valley, campus. And after nearly 9 years of military service with the Canadian Rangers, she is excited to embark on a new chapter of life. The term and diagnosis of BPD came her way in 2019, and she has since completed the 14-month DBT program at USTAT. Stephanie is excited to share with us today her story of struggle, success, and hope for the future, a future that expands beyond the diagnosis of BPD. So welcome, Stephanie. Thank you for
Hi.
today.
Thank you so much for the introduction.
Turn
Um,
it
I
over to you.
oh yeah. Thanks. um, I realized that statement of when the diagnosis and term first came my way is actually incorrect. As I was kind of outlining some tips for myself to guide, my story that I'm going to share today, and everything, I kind of realized that. It was actually a lot earlier than that. I can't quite pinpoint the date, but to be honest, I think it was 2013. And it's interesting because I'm from a very small town on the northern end of Vancouver Island known as Tassis. And that community is the population averages anywhere between like 250 to 350, if not somewhere around there. And I moved there when I was 8, and I was there between I was 8 till I was 17, and there's not a lot to do in Tassis. And for my own unique kind of experience growing up there was a lot of like challenges and things like that, a lot of like a lack of social interaction and everything like that. And the symptoms of BPD for myself actually, when I was formally diagnosed in 2018, but when that you first get the diagnosis, it's kind of like, okay, or maybe you don't get the diagnosis. We've heard other speakers today talk about how you can kind of like find it on your own. You kind of just like realize that you come across something and it's like, oh hey, I kind of relate to that. And I think for me it was this point of reflection of, okay, like reflecting back on like unstable or rocky relationships. That was like the first kind of like pinpoint thing for me. And so I reflect on that, and I reflect on the other kind of core symptoms and everything. And I realized that, wow, this is stuff I've actually struggled with some for like my early teens. Everything from like self-harm and in the fear of abandonment, like pushing people away, the splitting, all those different kind of things. And it's just like, I think, kind of remarkable to reflect as being that tiny little person going through the world and experiencing the world in my own way, and managing not just my emotions, but just how my brain is wired and how it reacts to things. And then just like not being validated at all, like, being put down on, made fun of, dismissed, not having any kind of space to just express myself or to even be heard or feel supported. And to still, now I'm entering my master's. It's just pretty incredible to see that journey. I think back just how it's all gone. And so what's really interesting with that whole development, though, is when I was 17, I left my small town of Tassis for college. And I think it was around the 6-month period, I had my high school boyfriend. We had split, and we were together for 6 years off and on. But that first initial like breakup, I think it really, really, really knocked me down hard. I kind of went through a period of, I think, really bad like depression, suicidal ideation, like self-harm, like all that stuff. And so I like got up the like courage to walk myself to the walk-in clinic, and the gentleman that I met with, he was the person who had asked if anyone had spoken to me about BPD or if I knew of the diagnosis and all this. And he referred me to the mental health center nearby in Courtney, where I was going to college. And they actually shared with me that I was too young at that time to get the diagnosis, which I think is interesting in hindsight, looking back to like what I've shared, that I've had these symptoms for like very early on. They're the same symptoms that I struggle with to this day. Some not so much, but the overall, consensus of it. And so they instead said that I had ADHD, major depression, social anxiety, all that kind of sort. And that was really my first interaction with the mental health services. So I was 19 at that point, and I had navigated all this, like, I'm also someone who was adopted and was in foster care and that kind of sort. And so I think that all these little things that go through my life or in a person's life really affects them in so many different ways. And it's very interesting to see the interactions that you get with mental health and services and support from outside, or inside, whether that be family or friends or something. And you kind of just like, you're just like fighting your way up current almost, this little fishy just finding their way. And so that's kind of like a bit of a long background, but I think it's just interesting because I didn't receive the BP diagnosis until, like I said, 2018. I'm living in Victoria. So between 2013 and 2018, it's quite a good chunk of time. I was very much on my own. And now I'm also a person who is diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And I recently received that diagnosis in the fall of 2021. So just this last fall. And that was such a like eye-opening, similarly to being diagnosed with BPD. It was kind of like, wow, everything makes so much sense. And it was this kind of like missing puzzle piece because for so long I have been searching for reasonings to understand like why I'm in so much pain. I'm in a lot of physical pain. And, I think I was 17 years old when I first pulled my back out. All I did was lift my a nephew of mine out of his playpen, and I couldn't like move. And everyone's just like, you're too young to be like this, and just like suck it up, like wait till you get old, you'll have something to complain about, all those like typical things that people make comments on. But I knew that something wasn't right, and I knew that something wasn't right with my body or my mind. And I just have been on my own, like trying to figure it all out. I seeing therapists, physiotherapy, chiropractor, acupuncture, massage therapy, and everyone's just like, well, you have just overstrained your muscles or this or that, and I go to coaches because I've been trying for a long time to work on my physical health and everything as well, and it's just really made me realize that I'm searching for all these answers on the outside and for someone to like give me direction or give me something to ground myself so I have something to grab onto and I can feel like not only do I like belong in where I am in the community in my social location, but also that I can just feel good in my body because I've also struggled with dissociation in my life and dysthymia, like mild persistent depression and everything. And so these little things that I guess they're not little, but the symptoms and everything that are kind of manifesting in my body, I think, to be honest, is a long-standing, like, I don't know, kind of like a consequence, if you will, of an underlining issue of my like spiritual, mental, physical, like kind of connection in myself. And so there's this massive disconnect that has been formed probably from early ages of me being a young child. I had failure to thrive as a young little infant, and so that just means that I struggled to grow and function properly just due to situations out of my little body control. And so it's not a consequence of my own behavior or anything. And I think that's what's really important when we're talking about stigma and validation and all these topics that are part of BPD Awareness Day, is to recognize that there's so many more factors that lead in contributing to the symptoms that someone feels and experiences on an everyday basis. And I think that that is super empowering to know and to recognize, and to just be like, oh my gosh, like, I'm okay, I'm normal, I'm having a human experience. Like, no wonder, like, I feel a bit bat crazy. Is because, or I shouldn't say that, but like, you just like feel so like you're just, for me, it's like a wanting to like escape out of my skin. Like, I don't feel settled. I don't feel calm, or I feel pretty chill. I'm a chill cucumber, but like overall it's just this imbalance. I think that's really the case, which is ironic because of the black and white thinking, kind of like a panda bear, like trying to find the playful balance, but struggling to do that. So I think presently, as I've mentioned, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia earlier this year. And I think that has also been such a huge eye opener for me in relation to what the kind of connection and development of what BPD is, because I didn't realize that there's a lot of connection between trauma and emotional and physical manifestations. Or I guess what I'm trying to say is there's this connection of trauma and those kind of impacts to physical pain. It kind of can manifest like that. And so it's interesting that I've been plugging away for so many years, a young teenager, and trying to find a way to relieve my physical pain and to help my emotional struggles and pain, and not being able to find an answer. So, following with that, my most recent discovery of myself was that I am a codependent. So I'm basically identify as someone who is codependent, and as a result of that, I've kind of formed a step group, and joined this group called CODA, which is Codependence Anonymous. And I'm very I think humbled by it to realize that this, again, to identify as being codependent or have codependent issues, can be a manifestation of a long withstanding, trauma and other things that have happened in my life. So it's not that it's something that I'm doing to myself, or that I want attention, or that I just, want to find a reason to attend another support group. It's that I realize in myself that there's work that needs to be done. And at the end of the day, it's not a psychiatrist, it's not a doctor, it's not a physician or a best friend or a family member or something out there that is going to help me be the best version of me and be able to heal myself, and not only heal my physical ailments, but to calm my mental mind and take control of the life that I want to live and build a life worth living. So I was recently introduced to the CODA, and so that took place in the winter, and just this January, actually. And so I've found myself a little step group, and so I go with them. And I have also am in the process of embarking on another DBT group. I have an intake meeting next week. I'm really hopeful for that outcome. But those two kind of like programs, I think right now, are my main focus outside of like work. And I've actually started this week in my classes for my master's, and so that's really exciting. But it's a lot of work to go through all this. And it's not that it's like the kind of work where you're tiring and everything. It's so exciting. I was reading some work last night, and I went to the support group, the BPD support group and everything. And I think, if anything, it enriches me on a level that I've never known. Like, to not only just be there and to hear other people be open and honest and vulnerable and hold that space and time for people to be themselves, I think that it also helps me to get to know myself better and be able to gain more skills to better manage my emotions and to be the best version of myself. So it's really cool to continue learning, I think, about all of these little things that have, you know, kind of outlined why I haven't maybe met my goals. I'm 27, by the way. I should have maybe said that at the beginning. But I feel sometimes that for being my age, I compare myself often to other people, and I think, well, I should be further along, or, I should have this, or should do this, or why am I not doing more? And it's really, I think, helpful for me to take those nights and to take that time to go through the material and just really connect with myself, because all this other stuff is like outside white noise, and it's not anything that is going to help me, grow and to flourish. There's this saying, something about flowers, right? You have a flower growing next to the other flower, and the flower doesn't turn to the other flower and say, like, oh, hey, why aren't you up here growing with me? You're so small. It's like, they don't care. They're just being flowers. So that's kind of, I'm creating like new mentalities, new narratives, new affirmations for myself, because I know that the issues that I struggle with, my pain, with my health, my wellness, like BPD, with symptoms of codependency, they're not going to go away overnight. And I mean, that's kind of like I mean, for myself, when I first discovered I had BPD, and I was like codependent, or that I had fibromyalgia, I'm like, okay, well, what are we gonna do about it? What's the solution? Can I get the, like, not the get rich quick scheme overnight, but like what's the answer? I just got to go to a group and fix it. Doesn't turn out that that's the case. So yeah, even though like I've completed the 14-month DBT program, and I've completed a diploma in social services and a bachelor's in social work, and I have all this experience in leadership and kind of helping others to find their strengths and everything, I still, to this day, I still struggle with either, I don't know, like being kind to myself, or like any of those things. So I think it's really important to validate yourself and to understand that, like, for myself, I just feel like, girl, you've been through a lot, and it's okay to not have it all figured out. And this world doesn't need like people who are know-it-alls and experts. We just need more people who are like compassionate and understanding. And so that's kind of my take on it. And I think, like, for my future with where I want to go, I'm embarking on this like super big challenge of completing my master's in community development, and I'm really excited about it. But it is going to be a bit of a challenge. It's about 2 years long, 2.5 years long. And I'd like to complete the DBT. I'll be hopefully getting into a DBT program, just to really like freshen my mind on the skills, and I think further ground myself as to where I am like presently in the moment. And I honestly am wanting to really get into arts and things like that, in different mediums, to not only like help express where I'm coming from in my life, and to kind of like use it as a form of self-therapy, but I think also to like help express my ideas in a way that may help others relate to myself. I find it really interesting when, in group, we'll listen to people share, and I'm always like, oh my gosh, like that is exactly what I would say, but I just didn't know how to say it. So I think those are all kind of things that are really important. And yeah, I think that like my story and my struggles, my successes, and my hope for the future is, I think, really something that I want to share with someone who doesn't have support. Someone who, like, for anyone, but particularly I feel for the individuals who struggle in darkness, if you will, and do not have family or friends or a loved one or anyone, and maybe they're in their 40s or they're older and they've never had any kind of interactions with mental health services, and now they're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because I think it's just like really important to kind of give yourself a hug. And I know that sounds super cliche, but to just realize that the answers are like within, and the skills and supports are here, and we don't have to have it all figured out, but we do deserve to, to learn the skills and everything so that we can build like a life worth living. So that's kind of what I have to share.
Yeah,
And
that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. I really appreciate you sharing your experience, strength, and hope with us. And you spoke a bit about like strengths and the positive traits that BPD have. There's so much like stigma and negativity around BPD, and I was wondering if there was anything you wanted to share about some of the strengths, maybe that you see in yourself or other people living with BPD.
yeah, that's a great point to make. I think that for myself, I've really realized that part of what makes me super, I think, great. I can't really say. I guess I am grateful to have BPD because it makes me me. But one of the strengths of it is the creativity and just, I think, my creativity, but also the positive side of the emotions. I think I've said a few times to like friends that one thing I really admire about myself is my enthusiasm. Like if I'm eating a sandwich or I'm doing something like just for fun, it's to one person who doesn't experience the like rainbow of emotions, they just be like, "Oh, this is a good sandwich." But like for me, it's just like an explosion of excitement, and like seeing animals do their thing and little babies do their thing. It just really, really makes me so excited. And I think that that's something that some other folks who don't have it, they can't experience that kind of level of intensity because it's I don't know, my brain is wired to just have intense emotions.
Mhm, yeah, positive or negative, like,
Yeah, right?
I don't really like using the word good or bad, but, like, really
Yeah,
good emotion, really bad emotion, like,
exactly.
yeah, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it's
It's
just
like
intense.
the dark shades or the
Mhm,
bright, like, rose colors, you know?
mhm.
But I
Yeah, 'cause, I
recognize
mean,
too.
emotions are there for a reason, so, I mean, that's why I say they're, n
Yeah,
not good or bad, because I mean, we have them for, to give us
exactly.
to motivate us or to give us a message, so,
Yeah. Yeah,
that's what we need to keep.
that's
Mhm,
super important, and it's really, like, really great that you mentioned that good or bad, the dichotomy there. It's something that I think can add shame, and
mhm.
really hold us back from
And it's a
recognizing strength.
secondary emotion, like,
Yeah.
if you have the emotion of, sadness, then you add the anger, then you have the shame, and then it's like that cycle, because then it can, last longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm,
Exactly. Yeah, so I think that's one of the strengths for me, and I think honestly the others is I think we've identified in other speakers today was the just the amount of like care and love. Like we really just have like huge hearts.
the empathy is so high, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
Mm,
just because you feel everything, and I think for me too with having fibromyalgia, like I just feel everything so
mhm.
much.
So, highly sensitive people, right?
Yeah.
Inside or out. It's just like that saying that Marsh Lenehan has about that we're like third-degree burn patients, that we can just feel it all over our skin, like,
Yeah,
it's like highly sensitive, the emotions inside or out.
very true. That's
Yeah.
that's how I feel for sure.
Mhm.
It kinda sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and if
this
there's any questions maybe if people have in the comments, we have one person, Shannon, that mentioned beautifully said Stephanie with a heart. So if anyone has any
um,
other comments or questions for Stephanie, we have a few more moments. Just kind of tying everything together. If there was something that you would like to share for someone that may be coming here that's either newly diagnosed or they're struggling with BPD, was there something that you might want for them to know?
yeah, I think that just speaking from my own experience, it's really important to kind of position myself with that kind of response, and I think for myself, if I were in their shoes, and if I were wanting to know some piece of information, Truthfully, like, the first thing I would wanna do or wanna say is to go to the ocean or go to a tree and hug a tree or just go in the forest for a little bit and either be by myself or be, like, with a really good friend. But I think that if I were newly diagnosed and trying to process everything, like I've shared with the different diagnosis I've received, it was kind of like a wall hit me, and it was like, "Okay, well, what am I gonna do about this?" And so I think it's really important not to panic and to just remain calm, as, like, strange as that might be, but I find that being out in nature or doing something to get out of my head would really, really help, because either way, like, the process and understanding what this new diagnosis means to you is very on an individualistic level, and I think that it's important to not take on outside kind of like, "Oh, you should do this," or "You should do that," or like, "Why aren't you doing this?" Or my favorite thing has been people telling me that I don't have what I'm talking about, as if
Mm.
they are me. So I think it is really important to kind of isolate, not, I wouldn't say isolate. What I mean to say is to ground myself in my social location with my own experiences so that I can be prepared to, take on that new diagnosis without having too much influence at me.
Yeah, and we just had somebody that shared about that they just realized they have BPD and wanted to know what your experience of getting the diagnosis was. So it kind of like ties into what you were just saying about
Yeah. Well,
this.
I
Yeah.
think yeah, I think for me, when I think back to actually formally getting the diagnosis in 2018, um, It was it was a bit of an eye opener for me to kind of reflect back on my life and look at those symptoms, and like I've shared, like the symptoms that they were sharing with me that was BPD were way early in my early teens, like 13 years old, 14 years old. And they say that you can't have it that young, but it's very clearly that, yeah, I can, because I
Yeah,
still
we've heard professionals talk about that. That's a misconception
yeah.
today, yeah.
Yeah, and so it was really, I think it was also really painful because in order for me to get the diagnosis, I disclosed to a friend, like, where I was in a particular emotional situation, and they, like, took it seriously. I'm grateful for that because they got me the diagnosis, but I'm also, like, I worry that I scared them, and it's interesting because the event that took me to be diagnosed is still the type of emotion, like, the high, like, I call it, like, the hurricane. It's like a hurricane that I get in, and it does happen, like, regularly, and it's just interesting because someone on the outside is, like, not familiar with those emotions and everything, whereas with you, it's like, "Yeah, this is normal, this is my life, I've been like this my whole life, I don't know anything else." But so I think it's really important to, like, have that education and awareness, not just for yourself, but build, like, a self-care plan and build, support with other people in your circle who are, like, who do love you and who are involved with your life, because then it helps for you all to be on the same page and know that, like, we're in the hurricane right now and we just need to, like, buckle down and get through this. It's not meaning that, like, everything's over. We just need to apply our skills. you know
Mhm.
because it's like
Yeah.
systems on fire and we just need to ice it out.
Yeah, and it might be helpful to mention to our audience that people who can diagnose are psychiatrists,
Yeah,
psychologists,
exactly.
and clinical social workers can make a diagnosis too. So, for example, like if you're in Victoria, that can be at USTAT. There's people that might be listening in from anywhere though, but like an urgent like an outpatient center, like we have our urgent assessment and
Mhm.
treatment center here. That's an outpatient clinic. So I also know people who don't have the diagnosis and they've just gone on to get the treatment and they still found success that way. I know that it also is effective
Yeah.
to get the
There have
diagnosis
been
too.
there have been some cases of folks in the support group who have done just that, because they're on wait lists and everything, right?
Mhm.
And so
It,
it's
it
really,
takes
I
a long
think,
time to get a psychiatrist. Yeah.
yeah, and so I think that if anyone who is kind of identifying with those symptoms, for some reason, I took my social service diploma and learned about BPD, but I was completely unaware. I didn't think that this identified with me at all, but I identify with it very well. So I think that that self advocacy and even going to a support group or reaching out to just anyone, I think
Or like a
is
holding space while
yeah, is
waiting.
gonna do yourself. You're gonna do yourself a lot of good to at least just clear out what you're going through or what you're thinking of and what you're experiencing. It'll be very validating, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, right space and place, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, Steph. Well, we're right at 6 o'clock. So, if unless there's like anything else in your heart that you'd like to share, the burning desire before we finish for tonight.
I don't know. I mean, it almost sounds like one of those cheesy things on a TV show where it's like, you too can build a life worth living.
I mean, that's a great way to wrap up.
That's fine. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Bailey, for
Thank
facilitating
you.
and guiding all this. It's been such a pleasure to learn from everyone today and to be able to share a little bit of my past, my present, and my future.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your story. I know it takes a lot of courage.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do I leave now?
I'll just remove you from the room.
Oh, okay.
Bye for now.
Okay, bye.
Bye.